Is this too good to be true? Or how can you do this? There are a lot of I want to say misunderstandings about this and how to take advantage of it. You said weirded out. I wouldn't say weirded out. Maybe just get cold feet, or they kind of skeptical. Yeah, that's another word. But too good to be true, it's not. Do your research, do your digging. I encourage you. Google's a great thing. ChatGPT or other AI type thing, great thing. You can say even, how does my company qualify for the R&D tax credit? And it could give you a whole list of those things and build a little case for you right there, so you can see that this is definitely out there. Number two, there are senators and congresspeople that are on record saying that they want you to take advantage of these things. That's what they put it out there for, not just for large companies like.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Barry McKinley Vision Podcast. As you know, we have fun conversations with all types of business owners, business leaders, people doing interesting things. Today, we've got our buddy Val with us. And here's the deal. I want you to be open-minded to what Val's going to talk about. I know many of my colleagues, I've tried to explain this concept to them. I do a very ham-handed service to this awesome thing that Val's going to talk to us about. But Val, break us in. Who are you? What do you do? And what are we here to talk about?
Sure. Well, I appreciate it, Josh. And as you said, my name is Val Majewski. Company is American Incentive Advisors. And there's a lot of things that we can discuss, but I know that the main topic, the main thing that you and I want to talk about is the R&D Tax Credit. But just our company, American Incentive Advisors, we're a tax consulting company. We're here to help business owners like you, like those that are listening, mitigate as much of their tax responsibility, their tax liability as possible. And there's some really cool things. You mentioned open-minded, but there's some really cool things that the government's put out there, the IRS has out there. If you can know where to look in the tax code, that you can take advantage of. And the main thing we'll talk about today is the R&D tax credit.
Excellent. That's awesome. And Val, I understand you had kind of a unique start to your professional career as you played some baseball, yeah?
Yeah. So I had this conversation today with one of my clients. He was asking me about, playing professional baseball. How did that happen? How did all this go? My previous profession was playing baseball professionally for 10 years. I played from 2002 to 2012. Now, most of that's in the minor leagues. So I'm by no means anybody famous. You may or may not have seen a baseball card of mine down the road, but played professionally 10 years. And I can't believe I lasted that long, but I'm extremely grateful for it for a lot of reasons. But if you want to talk, we could talk baseball all we want to. That could be another podcast episode, just talking about the upcoming baseball season.
There you go. Well, I'll tell you what, I've had this kind of appreciation over about the last 5 or 7 years. I've had the opportunity to do business with folks that are like former Olympic athletes, former professional athletes in football, and some Navy SEALs as well, which is, all of these people are
Those guys are awesome.
The highest level of competitiveness, duty, and just discipline. And I always ask them, I probably after about the fourth one, it occurred to me to ask, what's one lesson or one thing that you take from that strong, athletic experience and accomplishment into the business world?
Okay, there's a couple things that I can point to that translate really well. Now, baseball, I can't compare all sports, but I can tell you baseball. And baseball, it's a game of failure, right? Even the best in the world, the best that ever did it, failed more than they succeeded. So it's a work ethic thing, but it's also learning how to deal with failure and moving on, right? Having a short-term memory from the point where you learn from where you messed up, and then moving forward, looking for baseball, looking forward to the next at bat. Where guys go wrong is they let their last 10 at bats, weigh them down, and going into the next at bat, they're already defeated. Where for me in the business world, that translated really well, where I think people fail because they give up too quickly, or, they let past failures, they dwell on past failures too much, instead of kind of having that short-term memory and saying, hey, I'm good at what I do. I put in the work, I put in the time. Let's just move forward. You didn't succeed. Let's move forward. And That could be in sales and running a company and really anything. I think that's the big lesson. It's working hard. Yeah, you got to have that work ethic, but being able to learn from failure and move on very quickly, because it's just going to get you closer to the next win, the next success. For me in baseball, it was the next hit. I
Yeah.
knew I knew that no matter how many times I failed, I was closer and closer to my next hit.
I love it. And I think as a business owner, coming from a sales background, that just really translates. It's so easy to get in your head and just
Yeah. Oh yeah.
it's always good to do that analysis of what went well and what went wrong. But in sales, you can really dwell too much on, the failure of the last deal or last call. So I can really appreciate that. Val, I took a stab at the R&D tax credit. Well, more than took a stab, I was very successful with it with, I think, your firm a
Yep.
number of years ago. And in that process, I found myself feeling like I understood what it was. They asked all the great interview questions and did all the documents really well. But then some years later, I feel like, gosh, I kind of forgot all about it. So maybe you could give us a rundown on what that R&D tax credit's all about, what it's
Sure.
intended to do, and why small businesses actually might qualify for it.
Well, to give you the brief history, I mean, it's been around since the 80s, and the R&D or research and development tax credit started off as a research and experimentation tax credit. Um, it's meant for companies that innovate, that try to improve their processes, their products, their designs, their things that they do, so that they can just continually improve and get better. I mean, that's what R&D is. It's not just people that are dealing with beakers and test tubes and they're sitting in a lab in lab coats. It's not that only that kind of R&D, but it was developed for businesses that are US based that do certain activities, and they have certain expenses related to those activities that qualify as R&D. And there's not enough time maybe to go over all of those different things, but it's for businesses that improve upon, as I said, a process, a product, a design, obviously making the end result for the customer or whatever service they provide better, and they take time, effort, and money to do that. They may qualify for the R&D tax credit, and it's a way to reduce your tax liability going forward. But even more importantly, right now, we can look back up to 3 years and recoup the R&D tax credit that you could have gotten for those years. And
Right.
they said this has gone through different iterations over the years. The new one big beautiful bill that just recently came out rolled back some of the rules for claiming the R&D tax credit, making it again easier for businesses, small and large, to claim this and to take advantage of it. And we're not trying to replace your CPA or whoever does your tax preparation. This is an add-on. It's a specialty that we are specialists in. We're experts in, and we just want to do that complement to what your current tax preparer already does. I equate it to like you go see your general practitioner, that's like your regular CPA, and they're going to do an overall physical, an assessment, and just take care of your general health. But what if you need to go see a heart doctor or somebody for your brain or whatever? You're going to go see a specialist, and that's what we are. We're the specialist on the tax credit side, and we just add this little complement to what your tax preparer, your CPA is already doing.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And when I think of the primary audience of this podcast is that category of business called a managed service provider, those IT solution providers, those outsourced IT
Sure.
folks that are doing services and selling some product. And I think they're always having to innovate. Um, so I can come up with some examples of where an MSP might qualify for this,
Mhm.
but just to play it justice, if I owned a Subway sandwich franchise, I'm probably not going to find much in the R&D tax credit for myself, I would imagine.
Probably not. Now you'd be surprised,
Mhm.
because what if that? And let's not use maybe Subway, but let's
Sure.
use any other kind of, maybe it's a mom and pop restaurant shop or something, and they came up with proprietary software that helped make the end of sale better. They came up with a way to automate some systems, and it took time, effort, design work, and guess and check work to get to that. It may not be the idea of selling the sandwich that's going to be the
Right.
R&D, but maybe it's a process in their business that they developed that took time and effort to create. That could qualify for them. Now you're
Sure.
right. Are they a high probability company? No, but it's always worth looking into to see if they did something that can qualify them as R&D. And I think what that leads me to my one of my points here is that I think the biggest reason why companies do not take advantage of the R&D is self-censorship.
Mm,
They don't think they qualify. They don't think that there's something that they can take advantage of because they don't do any R&D work. When in reality, when you ask the questions, there's a lot of companies that qualify, that think they wouldn't. So it's always worth the effort. The worst that I'd ever tell somebody or tell a company is, "Hey, you don't qualify." But at
right.
least we looked into it. At least that's something that you tried out. And if it didn't work, fine. But you'll be surprised. A lot of companies will qualify for the R&D.
Yeah, outstanding. So for my company as a management consulting firm, we do a lot of innovation. We do a lot of things to help move the industry forward, help us deliver our services better, help our clients deliver their services better. Um, an MSP, I think I could make the argument of lots of examples of where they might qualify, but ultimately, what does that process look like in terms of, and like, for example, do you have to be an expert in their business to dig in to find what's qualified, not qualified?
I'd say yes and no. I mean, obviously, I'm going to learn about a business if I'm interviewing them to see if they've initially would qualify for the R&D. And there's a process that we have where we're going to ask a number of questions based on the IRS's four-part test for R&D qualification. And yes, the IRS has a what they call the four-part test. You've got to pass it from a baseball standpoint. If it's four parts, we have to go four for four.
Mm,
And we ask the questions and we dive a little deeper with each question. We give some examples and pry. And as we go, we learn more about the company and what it is that they do and some of the projects that they've worked on. And in the end, we'll make a determination if it's worth going down this road to take advantage of the R&D credit. And that's the whole deal is we just have to do a little exploration. We got to do some R&D ourselves in order to see if somebody qualifies.
sure. And so, and I don't want to ask questions that maybe are outside of your lane of this, but generally speaking, if you go through this exercise and somebody finds out that, oh yeah, maybe $10,000 of my payroll and maybe another $5,000 of tools really kind of qualify for this, that 15,000, do you know off the top of your head, does that immediately translate to $15,000 less tax liability for that year, or is there some ratio that gets applied?
Now it depends on each company and the percentage of time and things that they spend on R&D. And that would be for our CPAs on the back end to determine what the dollar amount is in recovery, because there's a lot of different factors that go into it, right? So I can't just say off the top of my head, hey, I spent this much, so this is going to be an automatic deduction of my tax liability as like a straight up tax deduction. There's a lot of factors that go in, and that's why we have to not only ask the questions to see if you qualify as a business or as an entity based on your activities of what you do, but we've got to look at tax returns. We've got to look at, P&L statements. We've got to look at payroll information and get a bigger picture. Once we determine the initial qualification, then we can see and dive deeper and determine what the estimate is on how much you can actually take advantage of when it comes to the R&D tax credit.
Sure. And
Long
so,
answer to your question there, Josh. Sorry, but yeah,
no,
it's not just as simple as, hey, I know this dollar amount and it's going to reduce my tax liability and I'm in a X amount tax bracket, so I can anticipate this much of a refund or a credit. It's not as simple as that.
no, that makes sense. And so, as you go through this and the CPAs take a look at it and whatnot, from that period of maybe your first conversation with a company and them being diligent and getting back to you in a
Mhm.
reasonable amount of time, Is it a months long process, days long process? What's the kind of typical horizon of how long this process
Sure.
takes?
It's more in weeks. So
Um,
the initial thing on our side, I mean, we'll do the interview, ask the questions, determine your qualification as a company. Once we determine, yeah, I think it's worth your effort and our effort to go down this road, then we've got to get all the necessary documentation. Like I said, tax returns, P&L statements, payroll information, anything else that might be pertinent to your case. And that's really what we're doing is trying to build a case. Because if the IRS ever came back and they wanted us to back up our work, we will to substantiate why we determined you qualified for this credit. We will. We've done that. We can provide that substantiation. So we are building a case for your company, um, and we will take probably 2 or 3 weeks to get you an estimate. I say that usually it takes less than that, but just to not overpromise and underdeliver, 2 or 3 weeks to get you an estimate of what we believe the tax credit or the tax refund, if we're looking backward, will be for your company. And then once we sign off on all of this, and you say, "Yeah, let's go forward. Let's do the actual tax work." We'll go through the tax documents, do any amendments that we need to do, and that'll take an extra 2 or 3 weeks at most. And now you're ready to file with the IRS and recover any monies that you're due. Or if it's filing in time, you'll immediately see a reduction. Your CPA might say, "Hey, you owe 100,000," and we come back and say, "Well, we were able to reduce it by $20,000, so now you owe 80." So it just depends on how we're doing it. If we're filing amended returns or in time, but it's a matter of weeks rather than months. When it comes to this process, it's really as fast as you can get us the information, that's as fast as we'll be able to work for you. And then ultimately, though, we're working at the speed of the government because if you're doing an amendment and you're getting a tax recovery or a tax refund, the speed of the government's the speed of the government. So
sure.
they'll say anywhere from 4 to 16 weeks, unfortunately. But the recent government shutdown and all the other things that happened have caused even more delays on that. But generally speaking, in the past, it's been 4 to 16 weeks to see your tax refund sent to you. So uh, our part, weeks, but then ultimately we could be at the speed of the government, which is undetermined, right? Or to be determined based on what's going on at that time.
When you look at this this program, I know I'm pretty sure I took advantage of it like in 21 back to 2018 or some version of that. But then I understand there was a change that occurred where
Yes.
it was maybe it was you didn't get a refund, you just got some sort of credit for future years, or help me recall what change that was,
Sure.
if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So at some point in time, like you said, in 2022, the rules changed on how companies can take advantage of the R&D tax credit and then how it was actually utilized. And, without going into all the crazy details of that, it became less advantageous for businesses, for companies to take advantage of it year after year after year because of the way that it was being utilized, or way the government now said that it can be utilized. And that went on for several years until, the one big beautiful bill came out and rolled back the rules back to 2021 when you last took advantage. And we can now not only claim those tax credits the same way we used to, but now we can look back in years 2022, 2023, and 2024 to recover or recoup or get a refund of any tax credits that you would have used using the old rules. So that's a pretty cool thing that this new bill came out with. Now there's a time frame for that. We have until July of 2026 of this year now to do that, to be able to go back 3 years. And then going forward, we'll only be able to do the current year at a time. We won't be able to look back using the same rules. But that is now kind of the normal going forward. We don't foresee any rule changes in the future anymore. This is kind of making it permanent going forward, and it allows you to recoup it immediately and not have to spread it out over several years, which is what the change did,
Mm.
and made it less advantageous for companies to take advantage of it. So we're glad, we're very happy that the rules were rolled back to the way they were in 2021 and earlier, and now companies are able to take advantage of this in a lot of great ways, and even recover unclaimed, tax credits from the R&D for tax years 2022, 2023, and 2024. So awesome stuff, Josh, that came out, with that one beautiful bill, one big beautiful bill, sorry,
Sure.
when it comes to the R&D tax credit.
We'll be right back with more, but first, here's a quick message from Baring McKinley.
Most MSPs are constantly busy, chasing tickets, projects, and fires. But without structure, it's hard to know if the business is really improving. Vision from Baring McKinley is the system that helps you work on your business, not just in it. It connects leadership strategy with daily execution. Vision aligns people, process, and performance, creating clarity and rhythm from goals to results. And the Vision app brings that structure to life, helping you create policies, track goals, review KPIs, and collaborate with your BMK consultant all in one place. Behind it all, Jetson AI, your assistant inside Vision, helps you find answers, generate insights, and take action faster. With Vision, you gain visibility, accountability, and measurable growth. You're not guessing, you're improving. Vision, Jetson, and the Vision app, your path from strategy to results. Start transforming your business today.
All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Okay, excellent. And
And if I'm misexplaining any of this, or if there's further questions, because it makes sense to me, I want to make sure it makes sense to you and those that are listening. So if you want me to clarify or dive in a little deeper, we can.
no, that's really helpful. I figure if I can understand what you're talking about, just about everyone else would be able to understand it.
Sure, sure.
Um,
So I'm glad I'm speaking English and it's not
yeah,
coming out all jumbled on your end.
no, for sure. When you think about, prospects or potential clients that you've spoken with over the years, where do they start getting a little weirded out? Where do they start getting a little freaked out and just kind of, because it sounds like nothing but good.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can imagine for some people, it might sound too good to be true. Where do
That
you find people getting a little sketched out?
that's exactly the most common question. Is this too good to be true? Or how can you do this? There are a lot of uh, I want to say misunderstandings about this and how to take advantage of it. You said weirded out. I wouldn't say weirded out. Maybe just get cold feet, or
Mm,
they kind of skeptical. Yeah, that's another word. But too good to be true, it's not. Do your research, do your digging. I encourage you. Google's a great thing. Chat GPT or other AI type thing, great thing. You can say even how does my company qualify for the R&D tax credit, and it could give you a whole list of those things and build a little case for you right there, so you can see that this is definitely out there. Number two, there are U.S. senators and Congress people that are on record saying that they want you to take advantage of these things. That's what they put it out there for, not just for large companies like Amazon to take advantage of, or a company that's developing, rockets and cars like Tesla. I mean, there's there's so many applications for this for the small business owner. That's why it's out there. The US wants US companies to innovate and make their businesses better and spend that money in the US. It helps the economy. So if they give you a break to do that, great. But the too good to be true aspect of it, why hasn't my CPA told me about this before? Or if it was real, my CPA would have told me. And understand, I mentioned the concept of being a specialist before. Just because there's somebody's a doctor doesn't mean they're an expert in all things medical. Same thing with a CPA. Just because they're a CPA doesn't mean they're an expert on the entire tax code and everything involved in a tax code. So you go see a specialist that maybe knows a little bit more about these specific things of the tax code. And just because your CPA doesn't know about it doesn't mean it's not true. And other CPAs have learned how to do this as a result because they just were not made aware. There's so many areas of the tax code that your average CPA, it's not their fault because the tax code is huge. They're just not an expert in. So
all right.
that's number one. Number two, I said the self-censorship thing, or people just thinking it's It's something that they don't qualify for. That's a big deal. Hey, I know what you're saying, but we don't qualify for it. We don't do R&D. We don't do this. Uh, I had, there was a company that, um, they manufacture something. They create prototypes. They test out different materials. And I had their leadership telling me, we don't do R&D. I'm like, what you just described to me is the definition of R&D. So the fact that you don't think you qualify, that's some self-censorship.
Right.
Another flag, if you will, people think, oh, this is going to trigger an audit. I'm amending returns and I'm taking advantage of this and it was going to trigger an audit. No, it's a tax credit that you can take advantage of legally. You qualify for it. It's available for you. Unfortunately, now we can only go back 3 years. We can't go back all the years that you were doing this, but it's a misnomer. It's a misinformation that people think, oh, I'm going to amend a return and I'm going to do this and it's going to automatically trigger an audit. You can get audited for whatever reason. And if you decide, hey, maybe some of the work that I did previously won't be good if I get into an audit. Okay. But what the work that we're going to do and the substantiation that we're going to provide, uh, we would defend any questions that come back from the IRS. And we have, we're going to defend our work because we don't want to bring any problems on our company. So those are probably the biggest things, Josh. The misunderstanding that this is only for big companies that do experimentations. They got to wear lab coats and they got to use test tubes and beakers and all these things. Not the case. This is only for big companies. No. This is too good to be true. No. Look up, there are plenty of articles out there about Amazon. I think one of them, if I'm getting it right, was in Forbes, and it talked about how Amazon had about $400 million. This was several years back in tax credits that they take advantage of. The bulk of that written in this article was from R&D. There's video out there of Senator Chuck Grassley talking to business owners and CPAs at a conference, telling them to take advantage of the R&D and other tax credits that they've put out there for them. So too good to be true? No, it's out there. You just never heard of it. That's why. And on the back end, the audit side of it, if we're doing things right, if it's on the up and up, we're going to defend our work. And trust me, you can get audited for anything. So, we're going to defend our side of it. We won't defend all the other tax work that your previous CPA did, but we will defend our work when it comes to the R&D. So
Right.
there's probably other things that I can mention, Josh, but for the sake of time, those are the big bullet points when it comes to, you said, people getting weirded out or having, I'd say, cold feet or being skeptical on the R&D tax credit.
Yeah, for
That was a
sure.
lot there. I apologize, but you got me going.
No, I love it. I love it. And let me ask you, just as I know you guys are probably not a $1 trillion company. How are you, how's your company going out there and finding prospects and connecting and putting your message out there?
The funny thing was, and I'll give you kind of the history of our company and how this started, because we own two different companies. One is called American Benefits Exchange. It's an insurance and financial services company, and there's American Incentive Advisors. Um, American Benefits Exchange, we had business owner clients that we helped them and their employees with different insurance stuff, right? Retirement savings, life insurance, ancillary benefits, and we came across the R&D tax credit and the application of it, and we said this would be a great add-on, value add, if we can do this also for our business owner clients. We hired a couple CPAs that were experts in this. We now have a dozen or so that are experts in this on our staff, but we started with a couple and we offered this to our business owner clients, and you can imagine this quickly became the main attraction, the main course. So we said, we got to separate these two things. We have the insurance and financial services side. We need to separate the tax consulting, which is where American Incentive Advisors was born from. But it quickly became, again, the main attraction. And you can imagine that when one business owner hears about this and takes advantage of, it spreads to other business owners. So we don't have to market much, if you can imagine this. We're not putting out ads on TV or the internet or social media. It's a lot of word of mouth. You know,
Mm,
almost anybody could be a client. It doesn't mean everybody is a client, but everybody could be when you learn about their business and ask them some questions. So we've just been able to naturally grow this, um, and get to all these business owners. And we've got, over 5,000 clients at this point that has mostly been done through previous clients, previous business owners, and now word of mouth, just kind of grassroots style, building our clientele. So it's interesting. You say, hey, how do we get clients? It's a lot of word of mouth and referrals at this point. People saying, hey, I know so and so at this company and that company, and you got to talk to them, and then it branches off from there.
Oh, that's outstanding. And what are you seeing out there? Are you getting some pretty serious competitors rolling out?
I mean, there's people that do what we do, and I'm not going to say we're always the biggest or the best. That's definitely not what I'm here to talk about. Um, but it's just there are other competitors, other people that do what we do. This it became a tax credit or tax consulting like this was kind of a fad during COVID because there were some tax credits and things that came out, and a lot of fraud and things that came out. But those that were doing it beforehand are still doing it now, and you're kind of the proof's in the pudding. Who you want to go with and work with. But there are competitors. There are other people that do what we do.
That's great. That's always a good sign that
Yep.
other good companies are trying to do what you're doing as well. Speaking of the COVID stuff, did you guys get involved in helping people with EIDL and PPP and whatnot?
So we didn't help with PPP, but we had to take that into consideration if we were doing the R&D. And we did help with ERTC, Employee Retention Tax Credit, for those companies that had employees. They stayed in business during COVID, and the government was offering those credits. Now you probably saw a lot of fraud out there with companies that took advantage of both PPP and the ERTC. But just some clients of ours were previous R&D clients that became ERTC clients, and vice versa. So yeah, we did get involved with that. And then when that sunset recently, we moved back to R&D and some of the other things that we help businesses with.
Yeah, it was interesting going through that period and trying to keep track of the rules. And I I have
Yeah,
a great really great tax person and a really strong kind of fractional CFO, and he had to remind me at least a dozen times about the ERTC and the PPP and how those couldn't play together and how they could.
right.
And I hear my clients just getting amazing ERTC scenarios. And it's like, man, that looks good. But what's been interesting, I've been reading in the last 6 months about kind of that speed of government thing.
Mhm.
So many PPP fraudsters finally getting taken to task. And it is hilarious just how exploitable that was, and how people, how the government had actually kind of found them, and just people buying watches and cars and just making up companies on the fly. And I remember
Sure.
going through and doing my own PPP applications, and I'm a pretty straight edge guy, but I was scared of my own shadow with getting one thing wrong, and then somebody else is out there, just making shit up. It was hilarious.
That's kind of what happened, right? It was like when the government throws this stuff out there, the initial thought, at least this is the way I think of it. Other people probably disagree, but in a lot of cases, the initial thought is helpful, right? There's a helpful reason why you're doing this for business owners, for people, whatever. But it also creates an avenue for people to skirt the system, to cheat the test. And I always said that with baseball, as long as there's a drug test, there's a test, there's going to be people that are going to try and cheat the test. Same thing here. People saw an opportunity, they took advantage of it, and before you knew it, the government was almost running out of money trying to pay
Wow.
all of these PPP obligations. And like you said, yeah, I'm glad that they're coming after them. They're cracking down on it. If people are going to get a big bill saying, "Hey, you got to pay us back the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we gave you retroactively," I mean, that money was probably spent. So I don't know how they're going to prosecute all these folks, but that's why from our perspective, we're trying our best to dot our I's, cross our T's, do things on the up and up. So if the government does ask questions, and they have, I don't want to make any claims that, hey, just because we do good work means the government's never going to ask any questions. Yeah, they might ask questions, but our team, our staff, uh, they'll know enough about the case. They'll know enough about what's going on to answer those adequately, to provide documentation and substantiation for whatever we do. So yeah, you're not going to be crossing your fingers, hoping or rolling the dice, saying, "Hey, I'm doing some sketchy things, and I hope the government doesn't have the time or effort to come after me." We
Yeah.
want to avoid that at all costs. We want to make sure what we do is, I said, on the up and up is all good stuff for you and your company.
Yeah, that's outstanding. I appreciate this explanation. It's like I said at the top of this, I've tried to convey this to, clients and colleagues over the years, and I did not do it justice. And just, but in my head, I'm like, it works. We got it ourselves, and
Yep.
just not being able to compel them. So I'm glad that you were able to articulate it so plainly for us. Val, does it make sense to talk a little bit about fee structure? Or is that something anybody interested should just schedule a call with you?
I'd say, yeah, schedule a call. We could talk about that on an individual basis. That's not a problem. But I will
Okay.
say this, as far as fees and costs, there's no obligation up until the point where we create an estimate. So we can go through all the work, um, ask all the questions, see about your initial qualification, review the tax documents and all the business material that we need, and produce an estimate for you. No matter how big or small that estimate is, you don't owe us a penny up to that point. Now, once you decide that you want to move forward with it, you say, yeah, I like the way this looks. Let's go forward. Now we're signing an agreement that talks about our fee structure, how we get paid, things like that, um, and get compensated for our work. Because, we want to we want to get paid too. Trust me, this is a business, but um, up to the point of creating an estimate, there's no obligation, no fees owed to me, our team, our company, anything.
So let's start wrapping up with,
Okay,
hopefully you'll play along with this. What's the smallest one that you guys have done? Like, getting back, if you know the numbers, and
sure.
maybe what's the biggest, craziest one you're seeing?
Well, without going on the specifics, the smallest would probably be around $10,000-15,000 in total recovery
Yeah.
for somebody, for
Yeah.
a business. There's a point at which it doesn't make sense to move forward from a time and effort standpoint. But let's say that. And then largest would be multi-millions that
Wow.
we're talking. So,
Wow.
checks that are going to have two commas in it, which is
Yes.
is great to see. And these
Yes.
are, again, there's two things. We're not going to uh, give you more money than you paid in taxes, right? Like, that's
Okay.
just not how this works. You have to be a profitable company, and you have to have paid taxes in order to get that kind of recovery or refund.
Right.
So those are the things that we're looking at, right? We can't take a small business and that has a very low um, revenue or and create millions of dollars in an R&D tax credit recovery. But
Right.
yeah, so let's say 10,000 to multi millions that people have recovered, and everything in between for these business owners. And that's why I can never say generically, Josh, what the average is or things like that, because it is truly case by case when it
Yeah.
comes to the R&D tax credit.
Well, I'm sure you have plenty of clients that send you a Christmas card thanking you for what you did.
Oh,
Because
they're grateful. Yeah, that's why we don't have to market, because they're going to refer us to other friends and other business owners in mostly similar, but in a lot of cases too um, different industries. And I can go over with you different industries that typically qualify, but it's really, if you're not looking into it, at least I think you're doing your company a disservice. And the worst we can ever tell you is no, you don't qualify, but it's worth looking into.
that's right. That's right. Well, very good, Val. So, did we miss any questions? Did we miss anything that people
Oh man.
typically try to ask you about around this?
Um, I don't think so. I just want to make that statement of saying, yeah, it's it's something that you should be looking into. If you're a company that does some sort of innovation, whether it's with a design, a process. I say process because there's different ways to interpret that. It's not just if you're in manufacturing making a product, but if you're doing something on an annual basis to improve your business, your processes, your products, your whatever it is that you do, it's worth looking into. And again, the worst thing that our company or any of our reps could tell you is no, sorry, you don't qualify, or you do qualify, but there's just no recovery for you based on the financial situation of the company. That happens too. But it's
Understood.
worth looking into You don't want to self-censor yourself, just assume you don't qualify. Because there have been times we did it, and luckily these people gave me the time of day because they were friends or people I was friendly with in the community, and they just said, "All right, fine, let's take a look at it. I'll give you a shot." And next thing you know, they're getting back tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that they overpaid to the government because they just didn't take advantage of this. They didn't know, right? And their CPA didn't know. And it's not your CPA's fault. It's not their CPA's fault. It's something they just didn't know. They're not an expert in. So that was a long way of saying, Josh, we covered everything, but just to remind everybody, like, look, it's worth taking a look at. It's worth
Great.
looking into.
Outstanding. We'll make sure to put a link to your company in the description. And
Sure.
where can people find you outside of that? Where can people find you?
Sure. My email, very simple, is val@recoveryourcredits.com. val@recoveryourcredits.com. And that's our website too, recoveryourcredits.com. And you can find out more about our company and what we do and how we help business owners just like you.
Outstanding. Val, thank you very much for joining us. Everyone else, give us a like,
I
a share,
appreciate it, Josh.
subscribe if we earned it, and put your comments of your own experiences with the R&D Tax Credit. We love reading those comments. We love responding to them. And Val, thank you again.